All right, folks, how you doing? So, welcome to Scotland, the land of Sparta, part one. So, let's get straight into it. Disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing, non-profit educational or personal use tips. The balance in favour of fair use. No copyright infringement intended. All rights belong to their respective owners. So, the thing with Commons Beaumont, when you get into it, is that he's certainly one of the most revisionist historians that there is out there. And the two maps that you see on the screen right now were from a book called The Riddle of Prehistoric Britain, which was published in 1946. Now, today's presentation is going to be taken from The Great Deception, which was published in 1953, as far as I'm aware. So he was holding on to this theory for at least 7 years. And unfortunately, I can't produce a better copy of the maps other than just purchasing the books yourselves. And even if you purchase the books, they're not really that much improved from what you see on the screen, unfortunately. So you're just going to have to blow up the screen and run it through a few filters. But the idea basically was that ancient Greece was actually located in Scotland in the Hebrides Islands and things like that. The Outer Hebrides, the Inner Hebrides, ancient Greece was all in Scotland. And according to Beaumont, everything was located in Scotland. I mean, the guy was either a complete genius or absolutely out of his tree, absolutely batshit nuts. It's up to you to make up your mind which, but I'm just presenting the information and you can make up your mind what you think individually yourself. Anyway, so Xerxes' invasion of Greece, according to Beaumont, when Xerxes set out to invade Greece after great preparations, all geographically described by Herodotus, his enormous army crossed the Hellespont, meaning, according to Beaumont, the North Sea, and landed in Thrace or Caledonia. His first rendezvous of importance was at Doriscus, a town on the sea with a protected bay near the well-known promontory Sirhuim. I think I pronounced that right. The Persian king marched overland partly along the coast, and the fleet, when it arrived there, beached their ships on the sands of this adjoining bay. Among other features of this place was a fort or castle built by Darius, and the river Hebrus, swift flowing, poured into the bay. The Holy Island, Samothrace. It lay opposite the island of Thasos, the Holy Island, otherwise Samothrace, the former seat of the Arch-Hierarch, or as I have claimed in previous works, which we will get into down the line, Ur-of-the-Chaldees. In the poetic description of Homer, the god Poseidon watched the battle between the Greeks and Trojans from a Samothracian height. Wondering, he viewed the battle where he sat aloft on Samos' topmost peak. Samos of Thrace, whence Ida's heights he saw, and Priam's city and the ships of Greece. On the mainland by Doriscus stood two Samothracian forts named Sail and Zone, and beyond this region, adjoining the land of the Cicones, nearest to Samothrace itself, was another coastal headland named Strime, Sacred Heights, the Ward Hill of Hoy. I would identify the area through which Xerxes marched first as Caithness, where facing Orkney stands the town of Thurso, the port for Stromness or Kirkwall, Orkney. So the wooded height, Samos' topmost peak, was accordingly Ward Hill of Hoy, the commanding height of the Orkneys overlooking Caithness opposite. By the way, why am I still wearing these? I was meant to be doing this with Jed tonight, but he bugged out. Anyway, I don't need those anymore. The commanding, okay. It towers 1,565 feet on the island of Hoy, the High, meaning the holy or sacred height, from whose topmost peak a splendid vista of the North Sea may be attained, thus lending point to Homer's poetic license of distance. Lochs Harry and Stennis on the mainland of Orkney by Stromness and Stennis for miles around are the vestiges of former main roads, crisscrossing evidence of prehistoric habitation on a considerable scale, covering several miles on both banks of Lochs Harre and Stennis. Today, there are but sparse signs of human occupation beyond a few farms, fishermen's dwellings, and the odd private residence dotted around here and there. The island of Stroma. Stromness, the nose of Stroma, takes us to the little island of Stroma, which now lies about 2 miles off the coast of Caithness in the Pentland Firth, between the two great promontories, Dunnet Head and how do you say this? Dunsansby Head, the former answering to the site of Sir Ham, again, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Point, the point northerly headland along the rocky shore. It would seem that in the time of Xerxes, the present island of Stroma was Strime on the mainland. But here the great Atlantic waves have invaded the shore and eaten their way in slowly but unceasingly. Castledown, Doricus. Stroma lies within the 10-fathom line, and generally that line may be taken to indicate the former coastline. Thurso answers to the situation of Doriscus as described so fully by Herodotus, only the place names have changed owing to their occupation for so long by Norsemen and Scythians, who probably gave Thurso its name after their war god Thor, or Dor. By the way, look out for Odin's Thunder and the War on the West within the next few months. I'm still editing that and putting it together, but you won't want to miss that. I guarantee you. It has a strong stream, the Thurso River, which empties into Thurso Bay, but Castletown, a small town 5 miles east of Thurso, answers better to the site of Dodiscus. The ancient castle may originally have been that erected by Darius. Caithness. Many prehistoric ruins of castles exist in this region. The remarkable characteristic of this part of Caithness, and as already stressed of Stromness and Orkney, is the presence of a series of former, almost chessboard-like straight and crossroads, indications of a once considerable population in these now deserted parts. From Thurso to Castletown, and from the latter for a further 2 miles at least southward along the direct road to Wick on the east coast, are indications of a great number of main roads with crossroads diverging towards the shores and centered around Castletown. Pick's houses, Brochs. Furthermore, the routes between that town and Wick, a distance of almost 21 miles, shows indications of former habitations in the same way, though more spread about, as though a suburb of a large ghostly city. Wick, the county town, presents a similar indication of a series of crossroads stretching from or for over 8 miles northwards along the coast, and Wick itself extending some 2 miles inland. Again, in the northeast coastal area, from the small town of Dunnet to St. John's Point, are all the indications of another town of size. All this region, be it added, is studded with Picts, houses, or brochs. There are literally dozens in this part of the world, all erected as both fortress and dwelling. Cimmerian castles. They may represent what Herodotus describes as Cimmerian castles. The Pictish broch or tower at Mousa in the Shetlands, about 100 feet high, shaped like a dice cup and containing apartments reached by a circular stair which ran to the top, and the broch at Burra in the Orkneys, 40 feet in diameter and with walls 12 feet thick at the foundations, are characteristic of many. Some others are underground Picts houses, cone-shaped as near Kirkwall, Orkney, which rise as green mounds above the surface, some built of uncemented stone and apparently used as places of refuge. Caithness Cromlix, or Caithness Cromlix even. The strange thing is that such have not been traced outside Britain, and their ghostly presence further denotes a considerable population in the prehistoric age, but they were depopulated by the Great Catastrophe and subsequent climate changes. Caithness also possesses the greatest number of cromlechs, or stone altars, in Britain, these belonging to the same age as the refuge caves or weems. Quote, in most situations, says Wise, who made a close study of these dwellings, little stone houses were built underground. Biddens show that they were inhabited in the Bronze Age. The name of Caithness may give some idea of their owners or founders. The Gate of the Cat. Professor Waddell, in his search for the origins of Aryan civilization, claims that Caithness and Sutherland were named Katuv, land of the cat, the lion breed, and as Kati or Chatai or Cassi, whose chief was called Juice Cat, the Duke or Dukes of the tribe, a title formerly born of Earls and Dukes of Sutherland. He traces their origin to the Shetlands and thinks their capital was originally at Lunisting on the northeast of the Shetland mainland, with a headland named Cataness. Caithness, he says, was derived from cater or cattiness, nose of the cat, and the Kattegat entrance to the Baltic was the gate of the cat. Waddell goes farther than this to trace their origins. The lion breed, kind of what I was saying here. On the left-hand side, you've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor, who came from the town of Crieff, well, still does because he's still alive. And on the right-hand side, you've got Ian Glenn from Edinburgh, and you have the description of what Beaumont was describing as the kind of Cati or Hatai or Cassie or Catai race, like the reddish kind of blonde hair, blue eyes, resembling lions, resembling big cats, basically. And then you go into popular media, TV shows and movies and things like that. Star Wars series, you've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, who, by the way, defeated Darth Vader not once but twice. He's a cat eye, or a cat, or one of the cat eye, with blonde hair, reddish blonde hair, blue eyes. The man who beat Darth Vader. You think this is accidental, and then also you've got like was it Jor or Jorah Mormont, who becomes like the chief advisor to the stand-in for Queen Semiramis in ancient mythology. The Dragon Queen, Daenerys, Targaryen, the mother of dragons. Ian Glenn, who again has the reddish blonde blue eyes and all the features that's described here. Kingsven of the Gotar, the children of God. They were, according to his researches, the old ruling race of Syro-Phoenician, known in the Old Testament as Hethites or Hittites, and were the Ari or Aria, the noble ones, the men of renown, the true Aryans. They were tall, fair complexioned, blue-eyed, wore how do you say this? Frigri. Can't say this word. Phrygian boots with turned up toes, and were related to the Goths. Goths or Geti, they might be properly Scythians, the race of Magog, according to the early Scandinavian writer Johann Magnus, who says that King Sven ruled over the Gotar in Sweden shortly before the flood, descended from the original Thracian or Titan stock. They call themselves Goth, or word of God, like the Chaldeans, the Chaldees, the children of God, whose hierarch was the Gad or God to whom Moses referred in the highest terms. And when you go into Edinburgh Castle, Nemo me impune cessit, no one assaults me with impunity. This will all be explained in great detail. Ur-of-the-Chaldees, Samos of Thrace, and he provided the first part for himself because there in the portion of the lawgiver was he seated, this is the quote, by the way, from Moses, and he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel. The Gad executed his judgments from Ur-of-the-Chaldees, otherwise Samos of Thrace, Orkney. From these self-same parts originated the tribe known in the scriptures as Heth or Hittites, who became the Macedonians. And I've covered this before, by the way. I like that video. Northern Scotland, nowadays relatively unproductive due to its extensive wild mountain ranges and the deterioration in climate, offers little comparison with the prehistoric ages. Caithness possesses nearly 439,000 acres, of which only 1/4 are productive. Most of the soil is bare, moorland, or forest. Macedonia, south of the Moray Firth. Again, I've actually covered this before. I think the name of the video, it was like 2 years ago I did it. Alexander the Great, Scottish or something like that. I can't remember, but I will link it and you can go check that out as well. A number of cattle and hardy sheep are reared in spite of the chilly climate and insufficient sunshine. But contrast with this what it must have been in a pristine age when these bare spaces were fruitful, where today ghostly indications of former streets, lanes, squares, and their surviving dwellings intimate an age of activity and importance when these parts might well have been described as the very hub of the universe. In Xerxes' time, its power had greatly waned, although we know from Herodotus and how do you say this name? Thucydides, I guess is how you say it. I hope so. That Thrace had formerly many important cities. Thrace declined after the destruction of Samothrace, and Macedonia, south of the Moray Firth, in due time became the paramount world power after the overthrow of Persia, which these days is incredibly hard to believe because like 92 or 94% of the Scottish landmass is virtually uninhabited. Most of the population live, between Edinburgh and Glasgow, the central belt and the lowlands of Scotland. There's hardly anyone up in the Highlands these days. The lands have been pretty much deserted for, I don't know, 200 years, a very long time. With the Highland clearances, everyone going down either to the cities or going overseas to places like Canada or what is now the United States, the colonies back then. So the idea of the Highlands of Scotland being once a like world superpower is quite frankly kind of hard to believe, but this is what Beaumont is claiming, nevertheless. Like I said, the guy is either completely off his head or an absolute genius. I mean, there's not much in the way of middle ground there. So Claudius and Britannicus. Herodotus uses a very curious description of the Sassanians, whose region, he says, quote, was formerly called Galatia. Now it bears the name of Bryantica. There is no such classical name as Bryantica, but Galatia or Galatia, North Scotland, was called Britannica, according to Pretinus, and I suggest the name intended was in fact Britannica or Britannia, and that Bryantica was probably a copyist's error. Claudius, when he claimed to have acquired the Orcades, gave his son the surname of Britannicus in consequence. And we've got good old Captain Picard there. What's his name? Why am I blanking on that? Well, we got Captain Picard here. What's his name? Why the hell am I blanking on this? I can't even remember the name of the actor who plays Captain Picard. That's embarrassing. Jean-Luc Picard, Stuart something. I'm blanking on it. Do you know what? I'll remember as soon as I stop recording what the name of the actor who played Jean-Luc Picard is. That is embarrassing. That is embarrassing. If you see me in the street, feel free to throw eggs at me because I can't actually remember the name of the actor who plays Jean-Luc Picard. I know he's from Yorkshire. Oh man, am I taking a beamer? What was his name? Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart. That was it. Patrick. Oh, I can't believe it. I can't believe I blanked on that. That's embarrassing. Anyway, feel free to leave your thoughts and comments down below. Is Commons Beaumont completely off his tree, or is he an unrecognized genius? I'm never gonna live that down, am I? Can you tell I'm not a Trekkie? My favorite, I know this is even more embarrassing to admit. My favorite Star Trek series, apart from the original series, was Voyager. I've only seen like 3 episodes of the Next Generation, so maybe it's slightly understandable. I kind of remember that the name of the actor who played John Luke Picard was Patrick Stewart, but I did remember in the end. That's the point. Anyway, thanks for watching, and have a lovely day or night, wherever you are. I'm never gonna live that down. Anyway, we'll see you later.